Sean Hannity does a segment on the events that have been taking place here lately. He's just so freaking ramped up for war and conflict. The way that he frames the statements that he makes, the questions that he makes. I'm gonna let the clip play really quick and then we're gonna go over what he says.
But first, we start tonight with Joe Biden projecting weakness on the world stage. Frankly, it's an embarrassment. And America's enemies, they are taking note tonight. From cyber attacks to proxy wars, you have an alliance that has emerged with Iran and Russia and China. Yep, all ramping up their malignant activity. On Friday, the largest oil pipeline network in the U.S. was shut down because of this cyber attack, reportedly linked to Hillary's favorite country of Russia. This pipeline transports nearly 50% of all gas consumed on the east coast of this country, and that's including fuel that is used at our military bases. So make no mistake, this was a major attack. And not only are gas prices already skyrocketing, they will go higher. Now gas stations, we can report at this hour, they're actually starting to run out of fuel, and our military was also impacted. So the pressing question of the night, Joe, how will you respond? My guess is they will do absolutely nothing. Well, you might want to call Hunter. He got the $3.5 million deal with the First Lady of Moscow, the wired money from the Russian oligarch. And after all, Joe Biden is doing very little. We also have China's military, their expansion into the Pacific and the Arctic, even as China is publicly threatening Australia with a long-range missile attack and a strike. And in February, Joe rewarded Iran, we told you about this, by ending UN sanctions put into effect by Donald Trump and his administration. And remember, Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism. And as we speak, the hostile regimes, get this, they continue to fund proxy wars across the region. A few days ago, the U.S. Navy intercepted the ship in the Arabian Sea en route from Iran to Yemen. What was in that ship? It was carrying a massive amount of missiles, grenade launchers, sniper rifles, other Chinese and Russian-made weapons bound for the ongoing proxy war in Yemen against the Saudis. By the way, so that's Russia, that's China, and that's Iran fighting a proxy war against a group we're now aligned with. That would be the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Emirates, Israel, and yes, the Saudis. Who would have thought about that 5 years ago? Earlier today, the terrorist group Hamas, backed by Iran, in their charter, they call for the destruction of Israel. They launched a rocket attack on the holy city of Jerusalem. This hours later, Israel responded with force. They attacked Hamas targets in Gaza. And following the strikes, the Israeli embassy in the U.S. tweeted, quote, "Imagine if a terrorist group was firing rockets at Washington, D.C. or London. Imagine the people of Paris or Tokyo running into bomb shelters. Israel will defend itself from attacks on its capital." Now, Joe Biden, he needs to decide. Are you going to defend Israel, Joe? And of course, if he watches...
Okay, so first of all, when he talks about what happened with the pipeline here in the United States, recently with the cyber attack, he frames it like, what is Joe Biden going to do about that? It's from the Russians. This is irresponsible as a person in the media, as a reporter. And I understand that Hannity is more of an opinion type of show, but it's still very irresponsible. The FBI is investigating what happened. The investigation hasn't concluded, and he's automatically pointing to Russia. He's not talking about people or a group that lives in Russia or that's based in Russia that did something rogue on its own. He's talking about the Russian government, that we should get aggressive with the Russian government because of what happened. Here's the facts so far that have been revealed about what happened. So the FBI says that the group behind the cyber attack is called Dark Side. They hack into large systems and then they use extortionist tactics. So they hack into large systems that control a huge amount of money and capital, and then they get sensitive material and threaten to leak it in order to hold that information for ransom. So until the business pays them is when they decide to shut up or delete the files or whatever. They also claim that a portion of this goes to charity, which does not in any way justify what they do. The group explicitly says in a media post that they put out that they don't align with any government and do not consider themselves interested in geopolitics. They're interested in money. They said, do not associate us with any government. But this guy who's just like wants a war, just ready for the United States to kill people and to use military power, he's going full neocon. And the ironic thing is that later in the video, he talks about how the conservative movement, how Liz Cheney has basically rebelled against the modern day conservative movement, which is based around Trumpism, which is the new brand of conservatism that is, overtaken the Republican Party. And what he fails to mention is that Trump was less hawkish than Liz Cheney. And less hawkish than he's being right now by every single thing has to be solved through military conflict. The investigation hasn't even ended yet. Why would we punish Russia, the Russian government, not knowing whether the Russian government was even involved in this situation? And from the evidence that we do have, it looks like they were not involved in this situation. He goes on after that to talk about Iran and how he calls Iran the #1 sponsor of terror and says that Iran is funding proxy wars in the Middle East. And then he comes after Joe Biden for lifting sanctions against Iran, which is literally one of the best things that Joe Biden has done so far in his administration. And yet he's upset about this. And my question then becomes, well, what do you want us to do about Iran? What do you want us to do about Iran? Do you want us to invade them? Do you want us to keep sanctions on them forever, which makes the innocent people, the innocent Iranians, not able to get health care adequately and food adequately, and they live under a crappy economy? Or would you prefer, and the crazy thing is that with us being aggressive with the sanctions, they're focused on creating the nuclear bomb. They're focused on creating the nuclear weapon. So what he wants us to do is to do that, to be hawkish on Iran to the point that they create a nuclear weapon and then they become a serious threat, because right now they're not a serious threat to us, to our country. They're not a serious threat on this shore. They're not. What will make them a threat is if they get nuclear material. And the point of the Iranian nuclear deal was to prevent them from doing that. The international community said they were complying with the terms of the deal and that they were not enriching uranium to the point that they could get a nuclear weapon. You want to negotiate a better terms of the deal? Okay, even though I think that that's bullcrap, that's a better stance than let's just sanction them, let them get a bomb, and then go to war with them. The crazy part about it to me is that he doesn't mention Saudi Arabia. In fact, he talks about how Saudi Arabia is our ally when Saudi Arabia is the #1 sponsor of radical Islamic terrorism in the world. And he doesn't say anything about it. Because, you see, the point is not projecting this American moral superiority on the world stage and we're here for justice and human rights. It's maintaining our empire on the world stage and control over what everyone else is doing. Why are we so invested in what is going on in the Middle East that does not have direct effect on us? And in a lot of cases, it makes us less safe. We become a target of these people and these sectarian organizations and groups in the Middle East when we get involved.